It's August 16th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the Trilateral Summit between leaders of South Korea, the U.S., and Japan. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Friday's summit will begin a new era in trilateral cooperation. Top diplomats of the three nations also agreed the summit will mark an important milestone. North Korea has confirmed the U.S. soldier Travis King is being detained there. According to the North, he wishes to seek refuge from mistreatment by the U.S. Army. Hawaiian authorities say the death toll from the recent wildfires could double to 200 or even triple in the next 10 days. Making matters worse, the crime rate is rocketing in the devastated town of Lahaina. Ahead of the Trilateral Summit between South Korea, the U.S., and Japan, America's top diplomat Antony Blinken says Friday's meetup will be a historic one that forges the three nations' security alliance. Our Kim Jong-sil leads us this morning.
The U.S. has expressed high hopes for Friday's Trilateral Summit at Camp David.
President Biden will host Japanese Prime Minister Kishida and South Korean President Yoon at Camp David to mark what we believe is a new era in trilateral cooperation among our countries.
He added that he had spoken with his counterpart, South Korean Foreign Minister Park Jin and Japanese Foreign Minister Yoshimasa Hayashi, to prepare for the summit. He added that the summit came at a critical moment when the world is being tested by geopolitical competition, the climate crisis, Russian aggression against Ukraine, and the nuclear provocations. He added that the heightened engagement is part of a broader effort to strengthen alliances and partnerships between the three countries.
Strengthening our trilateral cooperation is critical to delivering for our people, for the region, and for the world. It helps us promote peace and stability and furthers our commitment to the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
Earlier, the Washington Post reported that the three leaders are expected to announce plans for expanded military cooperation on ballistic missile defense and technology development, quoting two senior Biden administration officials. There are also reports that the so-called Camp David principles will be announced, strengthening the trilateral ties. Pundits say, though, the summit could anger North Korea and that Beijing is already expressing discomfort over the summit.
China opposes relevant countries forming various cliques and their practices of exacerbating confrontation and jeopardizing other countries' strategic security.
But experts said the U.S. has a strong motivation to use the momentum of improved South Korea-Japan relations to strengthen trilateral ties. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
In the meantime, Pyongyang has once again blamed Washington for pushing the Korean Peninsula to the brink of a nuclear war, saying the military force is the only way to prevent it. According to Russia's TASS news agency on Tuesday, North Korea's Defense Minister Kang Sung-nam delivered a speech at the 11th Moscow International Security Conference and said the hostile policies towards Pyongyang violate North Korea's independence and security interests. Accusing the U.S. of raising tensions on the Korean Peninsula, the defense minister pointed to the U.S. sending nuclear-powered submarines, strategic bombers, and nuclear aircraft carrier strike groups to South Korea. He also said it's not about whether or not a nuclear war break out on the peninsula, but a question of how and when. North Korea says a U.S. soldier, Private Travis King, who crossed into North Korea last month, is in the regime, seeking refuge because of maltreatment and discrimination by the U.S. Army. Now, this is the North's first public confirmation on the soldier. Lee Kyung-eun has the latest.
It's nearly a month since U.S. soldier Private Travis King dashed into North Korea, and North Korea's state-run Korean Central News Agency reported on Wednesday that during an investigation into his crossing, the soldier expressed a willingness to seek refuge there or in a third country. The KCNA also said that King had decided to come over to the regime as he harbored ill feeling against inhumane maltreatment and racial discrimination within the U.S. Army. This is the first public confirmation by North Korea on King's status, who on July 18th crossed a military demarcation line from South Korea to North Korea during a civilian tour of the joint security area. Previously, the U.S. had sought information on King, but the North had only responded to UN Command's request to confirm custody of Travis King. The KCNA report shows North Korean investigators concluded that King crossed deliberately and illegally with the intent to stay in the North or in a third country. U.S. officials also believe King's crossing was intentional, citing free will, with debates still ongoing on whether he should be classified as a prisoner of war, which will grant him certain rights. The report says investigations will continue while it remains unclear when Travis King will be released from custody. Before crossing into the North, Travis King spent 48 days in prison in South Korea and was due to face disciplinary action in the U.S. 이경은, Arirang News.
And on Tuesday, President Yoon Suk Yeol's father, Yoon Ki-jung, has died at the age of 92. The top office on Tuesday said the late Professor Emeritus of Yonsei University had passed away and that President Yoon went to his side after attending the country's National Liberation Day event. The Yoons will keep the funeral a private family affair, respectfully declining flowers and condolence visits, except from relatives, close acquaintances, and a limited number of state officials, along with former President Lee Myung-bak and former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, the leaders of the ruling and opposition parties, and religious leaders also paid their respects on Tuesday. Now, the late Yoon Ki-jung taught applied statistics and was a respected figure in academia for his contribution and leadership. And his son, the president, has fondly described him as his #1 mentor and a man of principles. Marking National Liberation Day here in South Korea on Tuesday, President Yoon Suk Yeol said South Korea and Japan are now partners, sharing the same values and interests. He also called attention to what he labeled anti-state forces threatening society. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
On the day to celebrate Korea's independence from Japanese colonial rule, President Yoon Suk Yeol chose to look toward the future when it comes to relations with Japan rather than focusing on the past.
일본은 이제 우리와 보편적 가치를 공유하고 공동의 이익을 추구하는 파트너입니다. 한일 양국은 안보와 경제의 협력 파트너로서 미래지향적으로 협력하고 교류해 나가면서 세계의 평화와 번영에 함께 기여할 수 있는 것입니다.
On Tuesday was his second Liberation Day speech, and during the last one, he labeled Japan a neighbor, as he was still looking for a breakthrough in improving the bilateral ties. He started calling Japan a partner during this year's March 1st Independence Movement Day address. Yoon's speech also comes ahead of the Trilateral Summit between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo later this week.
사흘 뒤 캠프 데이비드에서 개최될 한미일 정상회의는 한반도와 인도 태평양 지역의 평화와 번영에 기여할 삼국 공조의 새로운 이정표가 될 것입니다.
He also attributed South Korea's success since independence to the ROK-US alliance's defense of democracy, contrasting it with North Korea, which he says is unable to escape from horrendous poverty and deprivation. This, he says, is a clear difference between the two sides that took different paths since independence on the peninsula, but South Korea is still exposed to dangers.
그럼에도 불구하고 공산 전체주의를 맹종하며 조작 선동으로 여론을 왜곡하고 사회를 교란하는 반국가 세력들이 여전히 활개치고 있습니다.
Also, he re-emphasized that the independence movement was not just to regain sovereignty but to establish freedom and democracy, and is thus a universal and just movement for humanity. The main ceremony for the nation's 78th anniversary of independence took place at Ewha Women's University, a university stemming from a women's school that produced many female independence activists during the colonial era. At the ceremony, Yoon awarded veterans and surviving family members of the Liberation Army in front of 2,000 attendees, including politicians, foreign diplomats, and invited citizens. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
So, South Korea and Japan are now partners sharing universal values and pursuing common interests. President Yoon Suk Yeol said this ahead of the trilateral talks between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo scheduled for later this week. For more, we're joined by Professor Jeffrey Kingston this morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning.
So, Professor, what's your take on Yoon's latest comment on Seoul-Japan relations? I mean, how can we evaluate the bilateral ties at the moment?
Well, I think that President Yoon has done a lot to try to improve relations. They really sunk to a low during the Abe administration. And he's made a number of concessions over historical issues. The problem so far is that Kishida's response has been a bit lukewarm. But I think what Yoon wanted to do is set the tone for the upcoming Camp David talks, and hopefully this will signal to its partners that it's really interested in turning the page on history. But we've been here before. 25 years ago, Kim and Obuchi also talked about, putting the past behind them in a future-oriented relationship, and we've seen how that has been derailed.
That's right. Now, speaking of the Trilateral Summit, President Yoon and Prime Minister Kishida will meet separately for their bilateral, right? Now, the thing is, Seoul's presidential office dismissed the possibility of the Fukushima wastewater release being on the agenda at the summit. But now, why do you think the reason is?
Well, I think that they don't want Fukushima to detract from the joint statement. So I think that President Yoon looks at the Fukushima water release issue as a speed bump, and he doesn't want anything to derail the process of normalization and the institutionalization of security cooperation that people are expecting at Camp David.
Right. Security cooperation and alliance are the ones topping the agenda at the trilateral this time. Then how likely is it that the issue will be maybe discussed between Yoon and Kishida during their separate bilateral? I mean, if yes, then how might those talks go, especially with the release plan to take place as early as late this month?
Yeah, the release date remains murky, and this has been the problem all along. It's been a public relations disaster for TEPCO because the whole process has not been transparent and they haven't consulted with key stakeholders. However, I believe that President Yoon doesn't want this to get in the way of normalization and the sort of thawing of ties between these frenemies. So if they do discuss it, I think that Yoon will accept the reassurances from Kishida. And Kishida, or TEPCO, has responded to concerns that they will monitor water off the coast of Fukushima every day for a month after releases and give quick results the following day. And the idea is that this will ease anxieties. But the problem is TEPCO has generated a lot of distrust and has a deep hole to climb out of.
Right, that's exactly in line with what President had requested, that Japan provides real-time info sharing on the release and also possibly allow Korean experts to get involved in that release inspection process, right? Now, how likely is it that Japan will allow these requests?
Well, they have responded about the quick testing. I haven't heard anything about the Korean experts getting involved in the process. They did visit and inspect TEPCO's plant and the plans for the discharge. It may be a bit tricky to have them actually involved in the monitoring of the discharge, but I think both sides are eager to try to improve relations, and so I don't think they're going to allow the Fukushima water discharge to get in the way. The problem is that the publics in both countries are concerned. Fishermen in Fukushima are angry. Consumers in Korea and China are concerned. And in Japan, there's been sort of a media campaign to explain that actually China releases a whole lot more tritium into the water than the Fukushima plant release. And sort of this sort of whataboutery and trying to shift the focus away from what has been a disastrous public relations campaign by TEPCO.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us all the way from Tokyo this morning. You have a good day.
You too. Thank you.
Nearly 100 people have died in the Maui wildfires, but officials worry that figure could double or even triple in the next 10 days. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
At least 99 people have reportedly lost their lives in the devastating wildfires in Maui. However, due to the scale of the operation, responders are struggling to search through the wreckage for human remains. As a result, Hawaiian Governor Josh Green, in a CBS interview that aired Monday, said that the death toll could double or even triple in the next 10 days. He added that 20 cadaver dogs and dozens of searchers are combing devastating blocks of the town of Lahaina on the island's west coast, where an estimated 10 to 20 bodies are being found each day. According to official estimates, 2,700 buildings were damaged or destroyed by the wildfires, with the cost of the damage coming in at an estimated $5.5 billion. To review recovery efforts in Maui, U.S. President Joe Biden said Tuesday that he'll travel to Hawaii as soon as he can.
My wife Jill and I are going to travel to Hawaii as soon as we can. I've been to too many disaster areas, but I want to go, make sure we got everything they need. Want to be sure we don't disrupt the ongoing recovery efforts.
Biden added that he's ordered all available federal assets on the island to assist local crews, including the U.S. Coast Guard, the Navy 3rd Fleet, and the U.S. Army. And for Maui residents, more police presence is what they may need, as Lahaina has seen the crime rate skyrocket after the wildfires. Locals have reported that looters have been pillaging the town at night, with some stealing people's possessions and robbing them at gunpoint. They've pointed to the lack of police and military presence in the area while calling for local leadership. To add to the problems, residents say supply vehicles containing shipments of water, food, and first aid items are being rerouted, as authorities are barring access to the areas where help is most needed. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Despite consumer inflation easing of late, many still feel prices of everyday essentials remain high. Now, instead, people are turning to more affordable options. Our Lee Soo-jin has the story.
South Korean residents continue to grapple with high costs. Despite the recent slowdown in consumer price growth, inflation continues to be a serious concern for many.
I have more things to buy since it's the summer holiday season, but it feels as though the prices I saw today were even higher than they were yesterday.
The Korea Development Institute, a state-run economic think tank, recently revised its annual inflation estimate upwards to 3.5% from 3.4%. What are some ways residents use to cope with the high prices? An increasing number of people are using half-price delivery services offered by convenience stores.
We are currently delivering around 1 million packages each month.
Half-price delivery services allow customers to send packages from a convenience store for them to be picked up at any branch of the same convenience store chain. They're dubbed half-price delivery services because they're roughly half the price of the regular postal service.
It's cheaper than regular postal services because we use our own logistics system.
Because they're available at convenience stores across the nation, they're also much more accessible.
There are convenience stores everywhere, and they're always operating, so it's available for 365 days, 24/7.
People are also cutting spending by shopping at refurbished stores. Refurbished stores offer goods that have been returned by customers or by companies due to minor manufacturing flaws at discounted prices. A wide variety of items from clothes to home appliances are available, and they're in almost pristine condition.
Our employees unbox all the products that come in to inspect their quality.
There has been an increase in customers since prices began rising.
I come here often. I'm able to buy products that I want at a cheaper price. The quality is great. I actually just bought something.
One expert says that these options are popular because the slowdown in consumer price growth has not yet brought relief for customers.
While the index has gone down, the prices of many everyday essentials that people need remain high.
As concerns over rising costs remain high, the number of people seeking affordable options, such as half-price delivery services and items that have been refurbished, is expected to continue to grow. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Matthew Ashley, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in southern Russia, where at least 35 people have been killed and over 100 injured in an explosion at a petrol station in the city of Makhachkala. Now, search and rescue operations are ongoing, and a state of emergency has been declared. The blast on Monday evening local time was triggered by a fire at a car repair shop opposite the station. Hundreds of firefighters battled for 3.5 hours to put out the blaze. Russian President Vladimir Putin has expressed his condolences to the victims. The country's investigative committee has opened a criminal investigation into the incident. Now, Poland has held its largest military parade in decades amid rising tensions on its border with Moscow ally Belarus and in a show of force against Russia. Held on Polish Army Day, the event on Tuesday included 200 units of Polish and foreign military equipment, 92 aircraft and 2,000 troops. Now, the day marks Poland's victory over Russian-led Bolshevik forces during the Battle of Warsaw in 1920. Since Russia's annexation of the Korean Peninsula in 2014, Warsaw has invested billions into military equipment. This year, Poland's ruling party vowed to double the size of the army and increase GDP spending on defense. Poland's parade comes a week after the NATO members said it will deploy thousands of additional troops to its border with Belarus in response to the presence of Russian Wagner mercenary forces there. Now, YouTube has announced a ban on false claims about cancer treatments in a move meant to build on its medical misinformation policy. According to an official blog post on Tuesday, the ban will affect content about cancer treatments that have been proven harmful or ineffective. It also targets content that discourages viewers from getting professional treatment. The ban will take immediate effect and will be steadily enforced over the next few weeks. The platform also plans to promote content about cancer from verified sources, including the US-based Mayo Clinic. YouTube's medical misinformation policy already bans content with misinformation on vaccines and abortion, as well as videos that promote eating disorders. And finally, Brazilian football star Neymar Jr. has left French champions Paris Saint-Germain to join Saudi Arabia's Al Hilal in a deal valued at over $98 million plus add-ons. Now, the transfer was announced on Tuesday, with the 31-year-old signing a 2-year deal that will see him paid a reported annual salary of over $100 million. Neymar will now link up with new teammates, including Ruben Neves, Kalidou Koulibaly and Sergei Milankovic-Savic, all of whom moved to Al Hilal earlier in the summer. Saudi clubs have been splashing the cash recently in a bid to increase the profile of the Saudi League.
Good morning. Hot weather continues across Korea with heat alerts in place. And as much as we're waiting for some cooler weather to move in, heat waves haven't crashed the power grid. Meanwhile, east of Gangwon-do province will be relatively cooler this afternoon with spotty rain in the forecast. Then there will be passing rain in many parts of the country. Central areas in Jeollabuk-do province will be seeing 5 to 40 millimeters of showers, but Gyeongsang-Buk-do province and surrounding regions will be seeing up to 80 millimeters along with thunder and lightning until tomorrow dawn. And until that rain falls, strong UV rays will beam down on us. Don't forget to wear a good amount of sunblock and sunglasses to protect yourself from the high UV rays. Now, Seoul, Daegu, Gwangju will be going up to 32 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Busan and Jeju will be at 31, but feels like temperatures will be a couple of degrees higher. Now, temperatures will continue to be on the hot side through this week, with some passing rain in the forecast at the end of the week. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Korea time.